Well, hello there. Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo podcast, part of the Blue Wire Network. I have no idea why I just got so excited right there at the top. Maybe because it's been 2 full weeks since I've actually done an episode and had a guest with me. It is Tuesday, December 6th, episode 509. Thank you for tuning in, audio side, the video side. I'm joined again on Tuesday, like I always am, by my good buddy, author, podcaster, sports media personality extraordinaire, Joe Yerdon. What's going on, man? How you doing? It's been a minute.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute. Now I'm doing good, man. It's been a little exciting over on this side of things because I got some stuff finally popping off here. So it's been a little bit nervy, a little bit, just nervy, I think is the best word for it. But yeah, it's good. Everything's
good nervy for you.
Yeah,
yeah, I'm happy for you. We're gonna talk about that in just a second. I'm really, you know what? We've talked about this before. I know, at least I have on the podcast. Sometimes when you do this for a while, and again, you write all the time, you do your own podcast, you do my podcast every week, you jump on other people's shows, you tend to kind of, maybe not necessarily burn yourself out, but you get a little bit tired. It becomes a little bit less fun and more of a chore at times. And you would agree with that, right? No matter how much you enjoy it, it becomes a chore at times, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, every time you do work, it feels like work some days, even if it's something you love doing.
Sure. And I get that way sometimes with this podcast, but then I don't get to do one for 2 weeks and I start missing it, man. I'll tell you, I was in bad shape for a while there. In fact, I remember it was last Monday. I was supposed to tape with you and I reached out to you. I was like, shit, man, I'm feeling shitty again. And long story short, I don't want to relive all these boring ass details, but I ended up going to urgent care and I got diagnosed with COPD exasperation for the second time in 6 weeks. And basically I have COPD. I've been living with that for over a decade now. And basically it's like COPD on steroids. It's bad. It's like when it's inflamed and it's really acting up. And the first time I went, I had like headaches and fevers. This time it was straight up shortness of breath and just congestion and just feeling freaking awful. So went to the hospital last Monday. Then the next day, Tuesday, I went to the pulmonologist and been on antibiotics and steroids. It was probably the first, in fact, I know for a fact, going 2 full weeks. Started this podcast almost 5 years ago. So this is the longest I've ever went in between podcast episodes. I've taken a couple, mental health days and things like that. I went on a little mini vacation, but I've never missed 2 weeks, and certainly not because I physically couldn't do it. I physically could not talk last week. Probably good news for some people, not really so much good news for me. But yeah, man, this is the third time this week I've got it, or not this week, third time this year I've ended up at urgent care being sick. I don't know if it's the cold Buffalo air or what. I just got too used to being in Florida or what, man, but it shit sucks, man.
Is it, have you broken out the winter coat yet at all? I mean, it's, snow stuff aside, but like, are you like me where it's, if you can wear a sweatshirt or basically just a hoodie anywhere you go, isn't that just like what you want to do always? Because that's me.
Yeah, same. Literally the same. I don't even think I ever wear a winter coat. Even when it was like 10,000 feet of snow a couple weeks ago. I don't even know that I wore a coat. Now, to be fair, I work from home, so it's not like I'm out commuting on a daily basis. So I work from home. I do this podcast for the most part from a home studio, and I do have a second job. So I mean, I go out. It's not like I never leave the house, but I don't go out that much, man. I haven't really had the need to have a jacket. I just like to layer up, and I wear hoodies and I wear skull caps all the time. But yeah, man, it's been rough. I miss podcasting, man. I missed talking to you, missed interacting with people. Don't get me wrong, I couldn't talk, but my Twitter fingers were really strong over the past week, man. I was tweeting my face off because I couldn't talk. But yeah, man, it's good to be back. It's good to be back, and I'm happy for you. And by the way, you alluded to this. I want to talk about before we get into Bills and Sabres stuff. So again, if you follow Joe on Twitter, you already know this, or if you just know Joe, he's had his Noted Hockey Substack, and that's been going for quite a while now, man. And
Mhm.
finally, at the urging of many people, Joe has finally made it available where people can support his work. There's 3 subscriber levels.
Mhm.
It's $5 per month, or it could be, if you want to do annually, it's $50 per year, which you can save like $10 per year by going that route. Or there's a level, which I think this is really cool, a subscriber level, $50 plus per year. Now, there's no set amount. If you do $50 plus, you become what's called a noted founder. And what I like about this the most is that it gives somebody an opportunity to kind of, well, to put you to work, man,
Yeah.
to you know what I mean? To give you an assignment. You assign a story, and Joe's gonna write it for you. But in all seriousness, man, first of all, congratulations. I'm glad to see this become something where people can support you. And
Yes.
obviously that's important.
Mhm.
Sometimes people don't realize that going to and from the arena, because look, it's one thing to have a blog and to do stuff like I do and many others do. It's another thing when Joe is going to the arena pretty much. You're at every practice, you're at every game.
Mhm.
Financially, expenses add up. And again, you're doing this on a professional level right now, not just as a
Mhm.
little hobbyist like somebody like myself likes to do. I dabble from time to time. Joe is like really doing this. And
Mhm.
I kind of liken it to a mutual friend of ours, Tyler Dunn, who started a Substack as well, Go Log. And he bet on himself. And essentially that's what you're doing right now to an extent. So I'm
Yeah.
really happy for you, man. And for people who might be new to this show, just kind of tell them a little bit about what you're doing here at Norwood Hockey, and with subscribers being able to support you now, some of the stuff that you're going to be doing in turn for them.
Yeah. So with this, the idea is to do a lot of kind of broad NHL based stuff. Now, obviously, I'm doing a lot of work for Bleacher Report still. That's not going away. I'm still doing
Sure.
that. It's all part of the hustle. You gotta have your hands in a lot of pots here.
Absolutely.
But this is to do more that than some of the lighter, more entertaining kind of stuff that I do with Turner. This is more like kind of boots on the ground reporter kind of stuff, and doing analysis, writing some kind of featurey, profile-y kind of stories, doing things like that where it's talking to players, talking to coaches, talk to executives, to agents, GMs, all that kind of stuff, and trying to with hockey being such a it's a long schedule, it's 82 games. There's a lot of stuff that that goes on through the season, and it's not structured the way football is, where it's like what you're going to do every day with football. Hockey, don't necessarily know what you're going to be able to do day to day, and you don't know what's going to pop up, you don't know what's going to happen. So
Sure.
it's looking back at each game. Well, most games. I'm not going to write a games. I'm not doing. I'm One thing I did take from the Athletic. I'm not writing any game stories. It's just, but writing analysis about games and what happens and what people are saying after the games, and providing that sort of perspective of being a person that's there every day, who's around, who you're able to get an idea of like what the vibes are around the room, how things feel, how things look, and different things that happen around with the Sabres, certainly, because it's gonna be heavier Sabre stuff on there, but I've been doing some profile pieces called calling it across the hall. If there's a visiting team that's in town for a day or so, go talk to maybe some of the star players there, talk to some to people that might have Sabre connections, or connections to the past or whatever, writing something up about them, talk to them about catching up with them, writing stories about what they're up to during the season or what they've come back from. There's all kinds of stories to tell. So I want to try to tell as many of those stories as I can. But it's about, just providing, insight to what's going on around the, not just the Sabres room, but just, at the arena, at the games, for what's going on. So it's exciting. It's a lot of fun to do it, but yeah,
It's a lot of work.
it's a lot of work.
It
And,
is.
I've had people reach out in the past to say like, hey man, how can I help you out? And I was like, well, I got a thing coming. Just, just be patient. It'll be up there. It'll be up there eventually. And within the last couple of weeks, I had a couple of people being like, hey, do you have a Patreon? Do you have this? And I was like, give me a week, give me a couple of weeks here. I'm getting everything squared away. So, came up with this idea to do, $5 a month. It's kind of basic. That's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to do. $50 a year. You save some money.
It's
Save
peanuts.
$10.
$5. I'm going to
Right.
say this. I'm going to cut you off and I'm going to say
Okay.
this. $5 a month for the work that you do. Forget about the fact that you're on my podcast and forget about the fact that I consider you a good friend. Even if I didn't know you at all, I do follow your work. As a journalist, what you do, the effort you put in, $5 a month is peanuts. And I think the average sports fan who appreciates work and understands how things work in today's society is not like the old days, the Buffalo News, you had 1 or 2 publications and literally that's it. This is what talented people do now. Like I said, you got to bet it on yourself. You're your own brand. And for the work you do, the effort that you put in and the content that you provide, I'll say it if you won't. $5 a month is peanuts. It is.
It is. It's the classic cup of coffee, but I don't know how much a cup of coffee costs anymore because
$5.
Is it $5? Perfect. Take one day without coffee and put it to me for a month of work. So it's a good trade-off. A month of work for a day of coffee. That's a good trade. But the noted founder level was something I was proud. I came up with the name of it. Now the founder thing that's like a Substack thing, which that's fine. But I was like, well, I got to spice it up. I can't just call it a founder. Like, what the hell are you founding? Like, you're founding. Like, you're founding helping me out, I guess. But I wanted to make it give you something special with it because when you do subscribe, you pay subscribe, you get to comment, you get to comments. It's not a big commentary site. If you want to make it one, you can
Sure
do that. I'll jump in on it, that's for sure. But it's having being able to read everything, having no worries about that. But if you've enjoyed my work, if you enjoy the effort or both, or you like needling me.
If you tolerate your work, as you said in your post, if you exactly. Tolerate my work,
right? So it's always self-deprecating, Pat. You know how it goes.
Sure.
But it's but like if you wanted to give more than $50 for a year, like you get the year subscription, but then you get to be my boss for a story, and which is funny. I created that, and now I've gotten funnier questions from people being like, "If I pay you $50.01, does that count?" And I go, "Well, yeah, of course that counts." And they're like, "Will you write about my kids' hockey team?" I was like, "Well, sure, why not? Like, I can go do that, but ideally, keep it within the realms of hockey. And no smutty stuff. I don't want to put any constraints on anything. I don't want to scare anybody away, but like." But certainly, like if there's a story, a story involving the NHL or the AHL, that you're like, hey, nobody's writing about this. Why don't hey, I paid you, $75-$100, whatever it is. Go write about this. Go find out about this. I kind of want to find out what's going on. So things like that, because if you're helping to support me, I want to help give people the content they want to see.
Sure,
it's the big thing, and that to me was really important to do. So.
Something else important too that needs to be said along with this. By the way, if you're not watching this on YouTube, because most people actually are listening to this as opposed to watching this, the site is notedhockey.substack.com. Again, that's notedhockey.substack.com. And one other thing about subscribers and levels for you that you haven't mentioned yet is that 5% of subscription costs are going to the MDS Foundation. And for people who may not be familiar with why you're doing that, let's let people know that why.
So back in March, my mom passed. She fought MDS, which is it's a type of rare blood cancer. There's still a lot that's unknown about it. How it develops, how it starts, where it comes from, what causes it, all that kind of stuff. I know in my mom's case, it started up because of a gene mutation. It just something they said it's something that happens to people after they turn 60. Sometimes it develops for a lot of other people that none of that stuff ever happens. But for my mom's case, that's what happened. I think it's 60 or 65. But when you reach that age, sometimes this is what happens. And, the blood cells stop working right. Bone marrow starts to get a little sideways and things get out of hand, and it can get bad very quickly. So in my mom's case, they were able to catch it fairly early, but it, cancer, you can't predict how that stuff's going to play
Sure.
out. So she passed from that in March, and ever since then, and I began the Substack back in last October. not this past one, but 2021, with the idea to eventually do what I'm doing now with paid subscriptions, all that stuff. But it was not long after I started that my mom's health started to get a little bit worse for the wear.
Mhm.
And once the new year came, once it turned to 2022, things got worse kind of quickly. So that put a lot of everything on hold for trying to do that. So, but now I want to, listen, I'm not a wealthy person by any means. I do not come from wealth. I'm, usual middle class. I don't want to say blue collar because I've never had a well, I don't, retail's not a blue collar job, but like I've never had like a, like factory job or
Right.
manufacturing
I know
job,
what you
any of that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Um, but like, trying to give to charity, it's something I always like to do, but it's just, money's tight a lot of the time. So,
Yeah.
but this was an opportunity for me to, to have people support my work, to support me in doing that work. And it gives me the chance to give something to a charity that I want to help out, for something that I didn't know anything about until May 2019, when I started getting a crash course and finding out what MDS was and what it's about, and everything that goes into it. And cancer affects everybody. We just had Hockey Fights Cancer Month in the NHL in November. And it's, everybody's touched by it in one way or another. And sometimes the stories are positive, and that's great, but a lot of times, they don't turn out for the best. And that was unfortunately what happened with my mom. So I want to do something to give back. The MDS Foundation, they're not terribly well supported. Looking up charity stuff, I want to make sure I'm not giving it to some bad organization, but like they're straight up, they're for real. But they don't take in a lot of money. So I wanted to do something, even though, maybe it'll be a drop in the bucket as far as everything's concerned. Who knows? I don't know how well this will go. Hopefully the better it goes, the more I can be able to help out. But I wanted to do something. I felt it was necessary for me to do something. So this is what I'm doing.
Well, and I mean this, before we move on, with the utmost of sincerity, if there's anyone out there right now who works hard and who deserves support from sports fans and who's earned it, it's you, man. And whether, again, with doing your own podcast and the writing that you do, and doing like this show, for an example. And I guarantee if you got a podcast out there and if Joe can find the time to squeeze you in, he'll do it for you, man. And
Mhm.
you work hard, and you're talented and you do good work. I mean, it's one thing to work hard. You could grind, but if you ain't got no fucking talent, oh well. But you
Yeah.
do. So again, I kind of liken it to what I've seen Tyler be able to do. And I really hope that you're able on the hockey side to follow along over time with that same path. And again, I'm going to let everybody know one more time. It's notedhockey.substack.com. Go check it out, man. Check out a couple things he's already got up there, and I'm sure you'll see for yourself that it is worth subscribing. Before we get into some Bill stuff too, I quickly want to acknowledge, you and I were talking on off
Mhm.
here before we got going here a little bit. Bennett High School, they won the Class A state championship. They beat Newburgh Section 9 42-8. It's the first state title ever for Bennett, and they're just the second Buffalo public school ever to win a high school state football championship. Big props to Coach Steve
Mhm.
McDuffie, UB commit. I'm looking up the numbers. Jaden Lewis, heard of this kid, 77-yard touchdown run. He had 169 yards on 12 carries. Jameer Thomas, big 80-yard fumble return. Bennett came out strong. They were up 32-8 at the half, so it was never a game that was much in doubt. And the amazing thing about Bennett is you look at their record and they're 7-6, and you're like, well, how the hell does a 7-6 team win a
Mhm.
state championship? Well, they're 7-6 because they had to forfeit all their those losses were all forfeits because
Mhm.
they had an ineligible player early in the season. So they had to qualify for the playoff. But of course, once they got
Yeah.
in there, they got it. And I just want to mention that on this podcast
Mhm.
because, like I told you before we started taping, I'm bitching all the time that I don't think media outlets in Buffalo do a good enough job of covering high school sports and smaller college stuff here. And these kids deserve a lot of recognition. And I don't know, man. I just think it's a really cool deal. Living in Florida for 5 years and seeing how huge high school football was. It's like
Yeah.
religion out there. And not much goes around here in Buffalo, but when a team wins a state championship, especially a city school, a Buffalo public school, man, I take a lot of pride in that. That's really cool. So big props to Bennett there, man.
Yeah, I was able to. I saw this story come up a few weeks ago when they started getting smacked around with this stuff, and it seemed very specious, very like sour grapes coming from other schools or sections or whatever, just being like, oh, they didn't fill out the paperwork right. Well, screw off. Like, just come on. You're gonna kill a bunch of kids' season because somebody didn't sign on the right line or
technicality stuff,
get
technical
lost
stuff
with that crap. Like, that stuff just makes me sore to hear that, especially because it's a public high school. They're almost an East Side high school. Kind of, I mean, it's right on Main Street. I think. Yeah.
I grew up playing football there.
Yeah. So like it's a great story. And I love, who can't get behind a team that starts getting screwed by the man, and then they just come out and they just whoop everybody's ass and go win a title. That's pretty great.
It really is. And I grew up playing there at Bennett High School football. When it was the Yale Cup or the Harvard Cup. I'm sorry. The Yale Cup was basketball. Let me get my facts right here. Growing up, this was before Buffalo schools got into Section 6. It was all just Buffalo schools, and the Harvard Cup was the big thing every year. But anyway, every school has their own stadium pretty much now. But back in the day, it was all Riverside. All the games were at either Riverside Park or All High Stadium at Bennett, and they were always a pretty good team. But anyway, kind of getting off track. I'm just happy to see a Buffalo public school win a state title. All right, so Buffalo Bills. Isn't it funny what a couple weeks difference it can make? I'm going back here. We talked. I was like November.
You try to rub salt in the wounds here, Pat.
Careful. Yeah, November. Look, man, November 13th, the Buffalo Bills are up 3 scores on the Minnesota Vikings, and they blow the game, blow a 3-score lead, and they fought a 6-3. And now they've lost back-to-back games because they laid a complete stinker the week before in New Jersey against the New York Jets. That was 3 weeks ago. Things were not looking so good. Josh Allen's elbow was bothering him. He's making a lot of mistakes. This team was starting to look really flawed. Not that they're not, they're still not perfect right now. But my point is this: they're 6-3, lots of holes. The national media can't jump off this bandwagon fast enough, which is to be expected when a team struggles. Anyway, let's fast forward to today. Now the Buffalo Bills are sitting not just in first place in the division, but first place in the AFC overall. That's because the Bills, first, they handled their own business on Thursday night. Impressive against the New England Patriots. But then we got to sit back, and Bills fans got to do a lot of rooting on Sunday. And man, oh man, things just went absolutely perfect. The Miami Dolphins go into San Francisco. They lose. The Kansas City Chiefs go into Cincinnati. They lose. And just like that, the Bills are 9-3 by themselves atop the AFC East. And for the moment anyway, they're tied with Kansas City, and seeing that they won head-to-head. The Buffalo Bills are currently the number 1 seed right now in the AFC. Like I said, a nice, if you're a Bills fan anyway, a nice couple of weeks culminating with a lot of people, expected the Bills to be where they are right now. And for the moment, that's where they are, number 1.
It's I know. Listen, I'm not going to rain on anybody's parade here. You got to win. You got to win the games. Like, they won the games. They win the games. That's good. Like, that's the key point. To me, they're still not playing very well. New England. I've said all along, New England's a bad team. I don't judge anything. I know everybody likes to take a victory lap beating them. I get it. I understand.
Sure.
Like, that's great. They played like crap against the Lions. Absolute crap against the Lions. That's a game they should have lost. Lions lioned it. That's how. I said it at halftime. I was like, guys, friggin' relax. I know how this game ends. And people are like, no, they're going to win. Yeah. Okay. They didn't play great in the Cleveland game either.
No.
Those were Cleveland and Detroit are not playoff teams. I know Detroit's in the hunt. We know what that means in Buffalo, okay? We know what in the hunt means around here. But they're not a playoff team. Had they not crap down their leg the first 5 weeks of the season, maybe they would be, but that's neither here nor there. But they're not playoff teams. You shouldn't have to rely on your kicker to win you games against bad teams. Is my like they 6 field goals against the Browns. They get the Lions kicker misses a kick that basically cost them the game. Like it's a lot of stuff where I'm like, and again, you need luck on your side. You need to have luck as well as being good. The Bills are good. Never said they're not good.
Right. I'm
not impressed with these 3 wins, but they got the wins. The wins are the important part. Get the wins. You people like me got to shut up. So that's
I'm being careful here because the last thing I want to do is come off as a homer, an excuse maker, and an apologist. But I will say this to your points, and they're not entirely wrong, because were they impressive victories? Probably not. But I will say this: the Cleveland game, that was just kind of a mess. The snowstorm, switching to Detroit, they didn't. I do think that had some effect on them, at least a little bit, anyway. But I agree. Other 3 games.
But everybody said they were happier that game was going to be at the Dome. They're like, oh, if it's in the snow, they're going to run all over us and we're going to be in trouble. And I'm like, well, okay.
I agree.
And they struggle with it. And it's like, okay, well, you got your wish. And, that happened.
Yes. It wasn't the most impressive victory I've ever seen. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. It's weird because Joe Yerdon is a big Detroit Lions fan.
Yes.
I am not a Detroit Lions fan, but I feel like I think more of your team than you do. Because I'm telling you, Detroit's won 4 or 5. They easily could have beat the Bills. They could have won 5 of 5. They lost close.
That's not a could have. That's a should have.
I'm not going to go through their schedule, but I do know that they had a couple close competitive games. I know for a fact they should have beat Miami, and they blew that game because they played really good against Miami and then fell apart.
They should have beat Philly. They should have beat Seattle.
Right.
They should have beat Miami.
Detroit.
The Miami game's the one that finally got them to fire the goddamn defensive coaches that stunk, the secondary coach especially. And again, like I'm just reflecting back on the Bills Lions game here. Everybody on Twitter, kept saying that entire second half of that game, they got the worst defense in the league. They should be giving up 1,000 points. And I'm like, you idiots haven't paid attention since they fired the coach. They've got like it's not a top 10 defense. Don't get me wrong, but they went from 32nd in the NFL to 19th in 4 weeks, 5 weeks by playing any amount of defense. But everybody's like, well, they're the worst in the league. We got to score 1,000 points. Like, shut the fuck up, man.
I think Detroit's pretty good. Now, are they better than Buffalo? No. The Bills played like shit on Thanksgiving. Short week. And again, I know I'm sounding like an apologist.
You know who else had a short week that week?
I know, but they do it every year.
Lions did.
It's annual with them. The Bills went to Detroit twice in 5 days. I just feel like things weren't right. Now, Josh Allen did not play that well. Dane Jackson, I was ready to throw a shoe through the TV on that. Cleveland, pick your poison. Cleveland or Detroit. Dane Jackson couldn't cover anyone to save their lives. No. Lots of mistakes. Mitch Morse, I think Mitch Morse missed the Detroit game. He did, right? Because Bates played center. Yeah, that was pretty much a disaster. Anyway, I'm not making excuses. You're right. They were not impressive victories. I do disagree with you, though. I do think the New England game I thought was pretty impressive because the Patriots have been playing decent football. It was a divisional game, a primetime game. The season was pretty much on the line for New England, and that was it was a very one-sided game. Forget about what the final score was. I think the Bills were never threatened. They were never in danger. I think they were in huge danger against Detroit. Yeah, to some extent against Cleveland, not against New England. I thought the Bills had a pretty dominant performance.
100%. The Detroit game is the game that they should have lost. They didn't. So, listen.
Quick left turn here, Joe. Real quick here. You're a Lions guy.
Yep.
Jared Goff, to me, you asked me this 3 months ago. Just get through the season and get rid of this dude. Is he going to stick around? Because I feel like he's playing pretty well. If I'm a Detroit fan, I'm like, I think I could do worse than Jared Goff right now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, 100%. To me, it shows what you can do when you have an effective run game. Because Goff last season had to throw it, 9 out of 10 downs. And, that's not where he's good. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Let me get the name right. Amon-Ra St. Brown had an incredible rookie season last year because he was Goff's go-to guy. And he caught everything thrown at him, which was amazing. It's kind of shocking too, because that was not expected of him. He wasn't supposed to be the guy. And it turns out, he's the guy. Great. But like they had to throw all the time because DeAndre Swift was hurt constantly, and they didn't have a run game of any kind of repute at all. Like they just couldn't run the ball last year at all. This year, Campbell got his mitts on all his linemen and said, "All right, we're gonna run the ball like they used to back in the day," which is a weird call because it's a passing league. I get it. But the way that they run the ball and people have to respect it made it so that people can't just park it in a nickel and wait for Goff to throw the ball at them, because otherwise Swift or Williams are going to tear one off for 15, 20 yards. And then you're like, the hell, like who runs the ball anymore? And then, suddenly you're getting dinked and dunked to St. Brown or to Shark. And then it's like, okay, well, this sucks now. We don't know what to do. Like offense hasn't been a problem for him this year, and Goff has been great. He tore up Jacksonville yesterday, which is whatever. Jacksonville's not great, but
they're not terrible. They got a good pass rush. They've done well in a lot of games this year.
Oh yeah, but they put 40 on them. Like that's a heavy game. They knocked Lawrence around, which was good. That's good for the defense to do that. But Goff's been fine. They're still going to draft a quarterback, and they're going to draft it with the pick they get from the Rams, because the Rams are stinking ass this year, and they've got their first round pick, and now it's looking like it's going to be a top 5.
Yeah. You
kidding me? Like they're going to have their pick of the kid from Alabama or Ohio State right now. And it's like, well, there's your next quarterback, but like now you don't have to press him into duty immediately next year. You can just be like, oh, Jared's got it. Let this guy learn. Like do it the old school way. The way Dan Campbell wants to do everything is the old school way. Let the new quarterback sit there and watch the other guy play for a year and then say, all right, well, Goff's contract is probably up after next year or 2 years away or whatever. Let him play. Let Goff play. If you play like this offensively, you don't have to worry about it too much. I mean, Goff played like an idiot the first 5 weeks of the season, but some of that wasn't really his fault. I mean, the Philly game was his fault. He threw a pick 6 directly to an Eagles corner that just ran it back easy. So that's a typical shit Goff game, but I don't worry about them now. Like the offense is the last thing I worry about. Like they traded Hawkinson. I figured well, now they're going to score 6 points a week and they're going to stink ass. No, they've been better. It's crazy. And they haven't even had the kid they took in the first round this year play a game.
Williams.
He hasn't played it down yet. He hasn't been healthy to play yet. Like he blew out his ACL last year, last game of the year, bowl game, whatever it was. He still hasn't played. He's probably, if he plays it all this year, it'd be stunning, but I don't know. What if they go from in the hunt to being knocking on the door of the playoffs the last week of the season? What do you do then? Mm-hmm. They're scheduled.
I cut Joe off as we went to commercial break, literally as he was making a good point about the Lions. Look, man, I agree with you. They're a fun team, and if I was a Lions fan, I think there's a lot to be excited about. A long way to go, but there's light at the end of the tunnel if you're a Detroit Lions fan, man. And I think realistically, it's all you could ask for.
Here's the thing: I was going over this with my dad at Thanksgiving, after the idiot Bills game, whatever, fine. But I was like, look at the rest of the schedule they got. Okay, they just beat Jacksonville, cool. Took care of business. Their home game, fine. They're home against the Vikings. Vikings are fake as hell. I am convinced that they are the phoniest, good record team in the NFL right now. They're bad. They're fake. They're not a good team, but they luck out. And sometimes teams get a little bit too easy on them, and then they take advantage of it. That's whatever. But then they're at the Jets. They could beat the Jets. Yeah. Then they're at the Panthers. They better beat the Panthers. Yeah. Then home against the Bears. Yeah. Bears are stinking ass right now. Yeah. And then they finish at the Packers.
Yeah.
Well. Suddenly it looks
they're
like
they're
able to make a run.
They're in the hunt.
They legitimately can make a run right now.
I think Detroit is 7. I think Detroit is, and let's not forget here,
the NFC stinks.
NFC stinks. I mean, you probably are going to have. Well, Dallas is going to be a lot. I'm assuming Philly wins the division. Philly or Dallas is a lock to be the first wild card team. Then you got Washington and the Giants. I think Washington's 7-5-1. So basically, they're still 2.5 back. It's going to be a long shot, but with 5 games left, they win 4 of those games. Washington still got to play division games.
Yeah.
It's not over yet for Detroit. At least put it this way. At least they're holding your interest. Unlike the Sabres usually do when it gets to be late February, early March.
when
it comes to playoff races. At least Detroit's holding your interest late into the season.
You know who's going to screw it for him, though? Because it always comes down to the Lions shooting themselves in the goddamn foot. You know who else has an above 500 record in the NFC? The Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah.
Game they should have won.
Yeah.
I think it is a 48-45 shootout because they couldn't defend. They couldn't cover me or you. But, it's a game
they're in it. Sure.
Could have won.
Yeah.
That's the one that's going to hurt them.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the team that's going to screw them out of getting into the postseason.
Could be. It's just it's fun to see Detroit.
We got 5 games to go. So
we'll see we'll see. Maybe in a week or two.
Finishing 5-12. Let's be real.
Let's circle back to the Buffalo Bills. Okay, so again, they run off 3 in a row here. Lots of differences. Balance has been the biggest difference. The Bills, at least the last 2 games for sure, have been much more committed to running the football, and they've done a good job. It's taken 12 games, but finally Josh Allen is not the leading rusher on the Buffalo Bills anymore. Devin Singletary's up to 603 yards. I think
Josh the first
Allen's
time in 3 years he's not the leading
581. So Devin's now leading the team. They actually have a running back leading the team, but Josh has played pretty well. Different kind of well, though. Not explosive. Oh my God, this guy's ridiculous. Although we saw a couple plays against New England where he was ridiculous. That the tightrope on the sideline, touchdown to Gabe Davis.
Yep.
That was crazy. He had a beautiful touchdown pass on the run. The Diggs that got called back because Tommy Sweeney got called for holding. Anyway, those highlights aside, you get my point. He's been much more efficient. He's taken what the defense has given him. He's only thrown 1 interception in the last 3 games, and that was on a tip pass against the Detroit Lions in the second quarter. So he's played pretty well. Like I said, it's not as many explosive plays, but I think this is what Sean McDermott wants. He wants an offense that can run the football, maybe not as much as the passing game, but at least enough to complement it reasonably well, where you have to respect the run. James Cook had his best game. I feel like every 3 weeks we say this, though. James Cook has a great game, and we're looking forward to bigger things for him. And then he kind of makes a mistake, takes a step back, and he's right back in the doghouse, and Devin Singletary becomes the workhorse. Hopefully that's not going to be the case, because I really like James Cook. I thought he looked fantastic against the Patriots. But anyway, Josh Allen he's playing well. And it's like people, because he has a bad game, he hurts his elbow, a couple bad games, or so-so games. I don't want to say bad games. He was bad against the Jets. But that aside, it's like so-so games. He's still 3rd in the NFL in passing yards, and he's still tied for 2nd in touchdown passes. Very much in the thick, or maybe not in the thick of the MVP race right now. However, the way the schedule's set up, if they went out and they beat Cincinnati along the way and Tua along the way, Josh is still very much has the ability to get in this playoff MVP or regular season MVP race. I mean, you got, Joey Burrow, Mahomes, Jalen Hurts is right there. Tua sucked in San Francisco, but he's been really good this year. Anyway, who cares about the MVP? But my point is they're a different offense these last couple of weeks, much more balanced. And I think that's going to be important heading into December.
Yeah, no, you need to have the balance, and we've been saying this for weeks. You need to not have 90% of the yardage coming from Allen is the thing. Like you couldn't have him getting all the rushing yards and then throwing for all the passing yards. Obviously the passing yards, let him have all those. I don't want Isaiah McKenzie racking up passing yards or, anything dumb like that. But but like you don't need him running the ball every time. And again, Bills watcher, I every time I see him take off running, I have like that final destination moment where I'm like, oh, this is where it ends. This is where it all stops, because some dumb stuff will happen and then forget it. It's over. But because he's taken some pops the last few weeks, he's taken some pretty wicked hits. And some of that's not even rushing. That's a couple of pops in the in the backfield.
He got hit hard against New England a handful of times. He took a couple really big pops. Sure.
Right. So it's things like that, and I know damn well that's why they're trying to force the run more. Not force it, but like they're doing well with it. But that's why they want to do it more, because they don't want to have Allen taking off running all the time, because it becomes predictable, and then suddenly you got not just one guy spying him, but 2. And then if you're able to get in the backfield, well, he's going to take off running, and then you got somebody waiting for him to try to clean his clock. So it makes sense to do it a normal rushing game wise, because it keeps the defense on their toes, because they can't predict easily what's going to happen.
Yeah. I would say this too. It's funny because you're right. But when push came to shove, and I go back to that Detroit game, at the end of the game, when they couldn't fumble and they just wanted to get a couple more yards to make the field goal more manageable, back-to-back design runs to Josh Allen to the right side, put your head down, because it's like, I ain't trusting Devin Singletary and I ain't trusting James Cook.
That's a different situation, though. Like,
it is. Yes.
That's a make sure you keep the ball, because you know
game's on the line. Yeah,
it's not going to be a Viking situation again. Like, that stuff's not going to happen.
No, God, it's so. I tell you what, you go back again, and it is nice to be able to look at the standings right now, and all that matters at the end of the day is the Bills being the top seed if the season were to end right now. But man, you go back to that Minnesota game, a game that they should. God, you play that game 99 out of 100 times, you're not losing that game. Yep. Just a great. I mean, how they blew the lead. Whatever, all that stuff aside, handle the goddamn snap, go forward a half yard, 1-2 plays. Ball game. That's it. Yep. And now the Bills are 10-2, and they actually have a little bit of cushion to have a stinker along the way. Don't really have that luxury anymore, because I looked at Kansas City's schedule. I don't think the Chiefs are going to lose again. So the Bills, if you're talking one seed in the AFC, I think the Bills have to win out. Certainly they can. It starts this week, Sunday, against the New York Jets, which I would caution people. I think the Bills are clearly the better team, but the Jets did beat the Bills already in New York, New Jersey. They play the Bills tough. They got a good defense. They got some weapons, and they got a better quarterback now than they do with Zach Wilson. Mike White's no world beater, but he's better than freaking Zach Wilson.
He threw for 340 yards this past week. That's crazy.
They
still lost, Jets, but like, that's nuts.
I'm telling you, the Jets are a pretty good football team. Now, they lost to the New England Patriots twice too. So if you want to say the Jets, well, they ain't that good. Hey, the Jets are 7-5 with some major injuries, just like the Buffalo Bills. You got to come ready to play. The Bills were not ready to play against New York a couple weeks ago. I do not think that's going to be the case here.
Are we ready to write off Baltimore now because Lamar's jacked?
Well, he might only miss a game or two, but I still think they're going to make it as a wild card. I think Cincinnati's going to win that division.
Gross. Like, it's Baltimore. Like, I mean, maybe it's just because they played Denver, and Denver's the worst team in the NFL to watch on television, and that they keep ending up on television. But like, pulling something out. I mean, again, Lamar gets hurt, so you have to kind of pull one out of your ass against Denver to win it. But like, man, it's everything about Baltimore, like the last 3 or 4 years, is like, man, they're going to roll. They're going to be so good. And then everybody gets injured, and it's like, well, they're toast. See you later. And now it's like, well, Lamar gets hurt. Everybody else is fine for the most part. But like, Lamar gets banged up. You're like, all right, well, screw them. They're done.
I don't fear them. I don't fear Miami unless the game is in Miami in January or February. I'm telling you right now, the AFC to me,
5 degrees here when they play here.
Don't matter. You're not coming into the stadium, and Tua's not going to play well, and they're not going to beat the Bills in the stadium. I'm very confident of that. I just am.
What if Tua goes off?
He's not. He won't. Not against the Bills. Not in Orchard Park. Look.
I'm just saying.
Never say never. I get it. And I know I sound like a fan, but I'm being honest with you, man. To me, the AFC is 3 teams. Okay. It's Buffalo, it's Kansas City, and it's Cincinnati. And because I think it's 3 teams, that's why I think it's so important to get that top seed. Not only are you guaranteed to not lose in the first round because you ain't playing, you're also guaranteed to not have to play Kansas City or Cincinnati if you win your first game, in the second round. You got to go on. You're going to have to beat Baltimore or Miami or Tennessee or one of those teams. But Cincinnati and Kansas City, those are clearly, there's 3 teams in the AFC, and those are 2 of the 3. Let them play each other. And by the way, Joey Burrow owns Pat Mahomes, but you're always 3-0 against them. If you're the Kansas City Chiefs, I know this sounds crazy because the Bills are so explosive and they've beaten Kansas City back-to-back years in Kansas City during the regular season. But I'm going to tell you right now, if I'm a Kansas City Chiefs fan, if I'm the Kansas City Chiefs, I'm Patrick Mahomes, I'd rather play the Bills. I don't want to play the Bengals. Bengals are 3-0 against me.
Yeah. It's if it's a road game, I don't know that it matters. I mean, it's still Mahomes. He's the one-man wild card. You can win whatever.
Sure, he is. They're all wild cards. I think Josh Allen will win on the road too. I don't know. The Chiefs, they just don't match up well with the Bengals, man.
It's something about it, but like, I don't know. the bill comes due at some point, right?
Mhm.
Right?
Oh.
Like Bills beat Kansas City and Kansas City this year. The bill comes due. Some point, it's two good teams. At some point, the other good team's going to get one on you. And like,
Yeah.
I'm looking at it, it's like, oh, Kansas City's 0-3 against Cincinnati last 3 times, huh? Oh, interesting. What if they play in the playoffs again? Uh-oh. They win
I
that
know.
one time, then they're off to the next round. Or if they're off to the Super Bowl. Who knows?
Well, I agree. The difference, though, between being the 1 seed and 2 seed is likely you're likely only playing one of them to get to the Super Bowl. Whereas if you're the 2 or 3 seed, you're playing both of them.
Mhm.
If you're the Bills and you finish 2, you're probably gonna have to beat Cincinnati and Kansas City.
Well,
If you're the 1 seed, you're only gonna probably have to beat one of them. You know what I mean? So that's why I think it's really important. Besides just the home game. Piece of news, by the way. This came out Monday, shortly before we started taping. Not this week, but next week, the Buffalo Bills game has been moved from Sunday at 1 p.m. on the 18th to Saturday night, 8:15 p.m. Buffalo, Miami, a huge game, very likely for the AFC East. And it's going to be in Orchard Park. It's going to be on Saturday night. God, again, you're a watcher, not a big fan of the Bills.
I won't be watching that game, unfortunately. You know why?
Why?
The Sabres are playing in Arizona that night at 9:00. Cool. Good work, everybody.
I will not be watching the Sabres game. This is why Joe deserves your $5 a month, man. Because you have to sit
I'll watch the games you refuse to.
Look, I don't like it.
Here's the thing. I'm throwing this out there now. Maybe Lance and I do a live maintenance day podcast because Lance is not on that road trip. So maybe we just show up. Well, we're not gonna be able to watch it at a bar because the Bills game will be on at every bar. So
there you
maybe
go.
We'll just have to record in my apartment or Lance's apartment.
Watch a Sabres game on a little 15-inch TV somewhere at a quarter at one of the bars. But seriously, I've said this a million times, and I know you have too. I am a big Sunday 1 p.m. guy. That's just how I am. I like that routine. And I was planning on having a Christmas party on Saturday the 17th, man. So that shit's out the freaking window now because the Bills are playing. You can still have a gathering and a party, but it can't be a Christmas party. You can't be playing. I want to play Christmas music and wear all the ugly Christmas sweaters and have a good time. And now it's going to be all about the Bills. I will say this, though. I did look this up.
Ruining holidays.
I don't know how people feel about it. I personally don't like it. I don't want the Bills playing on Saturday night. But I will say this, too. I put up this tweet. I looked it up, and I did not know this, and I just went through the schedule and figured it out. Buffalo Bills record this year, Thursday games, because they had 2 night games, 1 day game. Thursdays are 3-0. Monday Night Football, 1-0. Sunday Night Football, 1-0. Sunday, 4:25, they played the Chiefs, 1-0. Sunday, 1 p.m. games, 3-3. The Bills are undefeated this year when they do not play Sunday at 1 p.m. They're 6-0 in non-1 p.m. games. So if you're looking at that and you want to put some stock into that, the Bills play better in prime time or not Sunday at 1 p.m., maybe playing Saturday night against Miami is a good thing. Matter of fact, the Bills play Sunday at home at 1 p.m. this week. That might be the last 1 p.m. game they play all year because they're playing Miami on Saturday night. The next week they play on Saturday again at Chicago. Then they're at Cincinnati on Monday Night Football. And then the last week they're at home against New England, but that's still to be determined. So who knows what happens with that game? Probably going to be a 1 p.m. Sunday, but they might move that to a Saturday as well.
Might be a 4 o'clock game too.
Right. It could be. They could move it. It's in Orchard Park. But anyway, yeah, man, I get it. I get why the country's going to be pumped. I mean, it's a marquee game. Again, it's the 2 best teams in the division, and it's meaningful. The winner probably, if Miami wins that game, they're probably going to win the division because that would be a sweep against the Bills, and the Bills are a game up now. So probably for the division, man.
Can I got a good question for you. Last night after the Sabres game, I go meet up with some buddies, and the game that was on NBC last night was Dallas Indy, and I'm looking at that going, how does that game stay at 8 o'clock on a Sunday night when you had Dolphins Niners and Chiefs Bengals? How do you not swap that game out at all for either? Now I know Miami's supposed to be on there, is going to be on there next Sunday, I think.
Yeah, they are against the Chargers.
They're out. How do you not steal Kansas City, Cincinnati away from CBS and say tough shit?
I don't know. It's a good question, and I don't know the answer because I don't know what the rule is. I know that the network is allowed to block
I'm
I
sure
don't
they
know if it's
blocked
one
it.
game. I don't know if it's 3 games. I know that because the NFL was going to flex the Bills Jets game this week to Sunday Night Football, and CBS blocked it. So I don't know. Maybe they also blocked that, because I agree with you. How do you not have Kansas City and Cincinnati as
I mean, I'm
a
watching Cincinnati, or I'm watching the Colts just hand the ball to the Cowboys defense for the entire fourth quarter. I'm like, who likes this? Who wanted to watch this? My problem is more with the schedule maker not making Kansas City, Cincinnati, the AFC title game last year, automatically the Sunday night game.
Yeah.
How?
I think the network got to block a certain amount of games before the season started from being flexed. And I know the Bills Kansas City game, that was a 4 p.m. game earlier this year. I know for a fact that the league or the network blocked that from being able to be put on the schedule for Sunday night. There's a certain amount of games that they're allowed. They don't know what week they're going to play, but they know that they're going to play that opponent, and they're allowed to. I know that for sure with the Bills Kansas City, because that would have obviously been a primetime game this year.
From NBC, I'm losing my mind at getting some garbage Thursday night type of game on Sunday night football. Are you kidding me?
Real quick, because you brought up Sunday Night Football, and then I want to finish with a few minutes of Sabres talk here. Odell Beckham Jr. came in over the weekend. I don't like talking about visits and stuff like that, only because we are taping right now. So it's around dinner time now here. It's 6:30 Monday when we're taping this. This is going to drop in the morning. And there ain't going to be no Odell Beckham signing on Monday night. I shouldn't say that. I'd be surprised, but it could happen relatively quick. 2 things. A, I think Odell Beckham Jr., if he signs anywhere this year and plays at all this year, if he's cleared to play, if he's healthy enough, I think it's going to be Dallas. He was here in Buffalo over the weekend. From what I've heard, it was a good visit. Yeah, I don't know. He told Von Miller, he jumped on his Twitch or something, said it was a good visit. I don't think he's going to, and I'm not trying to be Adam Schefter here. I don't necessarily inside sources. I don't think he's going to sign with the Bills. I think he's either going to not play at all or he's going to play with Dallas. And for people who are saying, well, I guess he doesn't want to win a Super Bowl. And this is what's going to be my other quick take here, my hot take. Here's a hot take for you before we get into some Sabres stuff.
Okay.
I wish you had a fire alarm going on at your house right now as I say this. I think the Dallas Cowboys are the best team in the NFL. I think they're better than Philly. I think they're better than Buffalo. And I think they're better than Kansas City and Cincinnati. Their roster is the best in the NFL. Dak Prescott is a good quarterback. They got a good offensive line. They got 2 great running backs. They got a great number 1 receiver in CeeDee Lamb. They got a good tight end in Schultz. They got complementary receivers, which, by the way, Odell Beckham Jr., let's throw him into that mix. And their defense is ferocious. Micah Parsons might be the best player in the NFL. He won't win MVP, but he might be the best player. He might have supplanted Aaron Donald at this point as the best player in the NFL. They got a good secondary. They got good linebackers. Dallas is the best team in the NFL. I'm telling you, man. I would bet on the Bills because I'm a homer. All right, I am. But my life depended on it. And you said you cannot take the Bills. Who are you taking for the Super Bowl? I'm telling you now, I'm taking the Dallas Cowboys.
2 things to counter that. Mike McCarthy's still the coach, correct?
That's their biggest detriment. You're right.
Okay.
Good point, too.
Somebody described the Dallas Cowboys. This is part 2. Somebody described the Dallas Cowboys to me as the Toronto Maple Leafs of the NFL. And you know what? They're absolutely fucking right.
Have been. Good
When's
point.
the last time that they did anything of that was like get to an NFC title game? The 90s? Maybe
I agree.
early 2000s? Maybe.
You're right. God, I hate that you're so right.
They won a playoff game in 2015 against Detroit that they needed the refs to hand them to them. The Lions.
I get it. You're right. Your points are valid.
Got a 90-yard penalty for running on the field to yell at the referee for a pass interference call. They were calling against Dallas. He's not a defensive player. He ran on the field to yell at the referee. And they picked up the flag.
Look, man, you're right. I'm trying to look up something here.
7 years. I'm still very mad about that game.
I'm trying to look right now. Last time they won a game in the playoffs, Jesus Christ.
Was it 2015?
I don't even know. Well, they won the Super Bowl in 95.
Right.
They lost wild card. I don't know if they won it. There's some times where they've lost it. They haven't made a conference championship game since they won the Super Bowl in 95. Let's put it that way. And let me be clear about something too. I fucking hate the Dallas Cowboys. I am not a Cowboys fan. All right. I hate them.
I'd hear that.
I've always hated them. So I'm not rooting for them. I just think they're really, really good. I think they have the best roster in the NFL. I don't care about the whole Maple Leafs thing, although you're right, because things, you can get the monkey off your back. That could happen overnight. I will say this, though. Your point about Mike McCarthy is well taken, because I don't trust that motherfucker in a close game. Like, if they're in a tight game in the fourth quarter, that's where I would get concerned. But, man, that team is really – and I don't want to disrespect Philly. Right. Philly's very good, too. But
I think Philly smokes them, honestly. Right.
Well, no. I think that if they smoke him, they're going to smoke him with Odell Beckham Jr., because that's what I'm getting at here. I think my point is, if Beckham plays this year, I think it's going to be Dallas and not Buffalo. All right, let's turn to some Sabres talk before we get out of here.
I looked up the playoff record. The last time they won a playoff game was 2018.
2018
against Seattle. 24.
So they did win a playoff game.
Oh, right. 2018. The time before that, yeah, it was the Detroit game.
Right.
So yeah, so they've
history
won.
says history doesn't bode well for them. But that said, like I said, I just think that on paper, I think they're the best team in the NFL. I didn't say they're going to win the Super Bowl. I said I think they're the best team in the NFL right now.
Mike McCarthy guarantees they are not going to win. They might not get out of the first. They might not get past their first game, which they don't usually do. So
yeah. All right.
McCarthy never gets past his first game is the other thing. I win the NFC title game and then lays a giant egg on the field.
He's definitely the biggest detriment for Dallas right now. All right, so speaking of championships, I don't think the Sabres are going to be celebrating one anytime soon. But
no,
you were there at the arena Sunday night. They looked really good. They beat the San Jose Sharks 6-3. So 25 games in, they're 11-13-1. I kind of feel like you can look at this team right now, depending on if you want to look glass half full or glass half empty. I kind of want to take a little bit peek into both ways there. And by the way, if you haven't checked out Main Estate Podcast, it just dropped here on Monday. Lance and Joe, I'm sure you guys talk plenty about this game. I know you're talking about the Cousins line as well. You guys highlighted that. So make sure you guys go check that out. Glass half full. Sabres have won 2 of their last 3. Tage Thompson just continues to be ridiculous. Not just with the production, but the way he's scoring goals. I mean, it's just so fun to watch. He's got 16 goals this year, 34 points on the season. Rasmus Dahlin, he's got 29 points in 25 games. He's on pace for like 90-something points. And I saw it yesterday or on Twitter, like the Sabres franchise record for points by a defenseman is Phil Housling. It's like 82, 83, something like that. So Dahlin's on pace right now to obliterate that.
Yeah.
Dylan Cousins, by the way, so 24 points, 25 games, 9 points, 4 goals this week. And it was just shortly before we started taping this. He's actually the NHL's second star of the week. Again, 9 points in 4 games. So he's just been absolutely phenomenal. Alex Tuck's up to 12 goals and 24 points. And Jeff Skinner's up to 12 goals and 27 points. He's been one of the hottest players in the NHL. So like that nucleus, if you're looking at the glass half full, man, these boys are fun to watch right now, man. It really is entertaining. It's fun to put on a hockey game. These at least 2 of their 4 lines. It's like, man, it's like electricity when they're on the ice.
Yeah, the second highest scoring team in the NHL right now.
Are they really?
Yes.
I did not know that. Wow.
Yes. Yeah, it is surprising to hear that. Like it's like, oh, them? Wow, really?
I didn't know that.
95 goals.
Holy shit.
Dallas Stars are number 1 with 98. Like that, and they have probably the best player in the league right now. Well, one of them, anyways, in Jason Robertson. So, and the Devils are 3rd. Like it's like the 90s all over again, Pat. The Stars, the Sabres, Devils leading the league in goals. Like, well, Sabres never really did well with the offense in the past, but still, like that's crazy. But yeah, it's man, oh man, it's they have 3. I would say they have 3 lines squared away right now. Certainly Tage, Skinner, and Tuck. Like that's set it in stone. I think you can set Peterka, Cousins, and Quinn in stone too. Because if you break them up, it's because something, either like they go quiet for weeks on end, and then you're just kind of like, well, we got to do something to change it up, or a guy gets banged up. Like that's the only way you're breaking that lineup. I would say the fourth line in name, 3rd line in use, with Gergensons and Opozo, whether it's Jost or it's Krebs centering him, I don't think it matters because that's your third line, and either of those guys can take care of business. And we saw that against San Jose. They split time between centering that line last night because I think Don just wanted to make sure because I think he knew he was parking Middlestat and Olofsson on the bench as much as possible late, second half of that game. So he wanted to make sure Jost and Krebs got the ice time that they should get. And people are concerned about Krebs. We talked about it. Lance and I talked about it in the pod. I'm not concerned about him right now. The last two games he's played, he looked very good. So it's just, figuring out how to get that bottom end of the lineup correct. And you might have to like find a way to sit down. Well, not sit down, but like you might have to break up Girgensons and Opozo and just have one of those guys go to the, to the other line and play with somebody. But I think you have to separate Middlestat and Olofsson somehow on one line together at 5-on-5. Play out, power play, whatever. Like let them stay together. They're good there. 5-on-5 play though, they've been pretty rough the last few weeks, and last night kind of highlighted it pretty well because they get the goal to go up 5-2, and 29 seconds later, the line he puts out it was Jost with Middlestat and Olofsson with Grayson and Fitzgerald, and they gave up a goal in 30 seconds. It was like, okay, cool, great. Like that's all right. Middlestat, Olofsson, go have a seat. Maybe we'll put you out again, at the last minute of the game if we get up by 3 goals again. But that's an issue they got to figure out. Don knows he's got to get it figured out with those two guys, but it's a severe lack of confidence with them. They know they're not playing well. It's stressful. So, they see the other two scoring lines going off and popping off and scoring a ton of goals, and they can't get anything going at 5-on-5. So it's stressful. Half of Sabres Twitter wants to trade both of those guys out of town already. So it's, they're not going to do that though. They like them on the power play too much. Yeah.
What point, when it comes to Middlestat, I want to use him more as an example. I think back to Tage Thompson, and it's easy now. You see a superstar. That's what he is. He's turned into a superstar. And last year he became a star player. Well, before that, bust, nothing, mediocre, run out of town by fans, get rid of him. The worst trade ever with Ryan O'Reilly. They got nothing back. They got a bunch of trash back, including Tage Thompson. That was a mindset not all that long ago, right?
Yeah.
Do you think which is an outlier, typically speaking, if a player is that bad, you don't become one of the best players in the NHL. But do you think to some extent maybe the organization is having an abundance of patience with a guy like, say, Casey Middlestat? Because it's like what we see right now. Look, I'm no analytics guy. I'm no advanced stat guy. Okay. But I do have, a set of functioning eyeballs, and I watch the games, and I don't like what I see from Casey Middlestat. I don't know what the charts say. I know they say not good things about him. Right. And I don't like the way he's playing. And at what point does Granato say, all right, man, this isn't working, and we got to scratch him. We got to do something. We got to figure something out. And you could probably use Olofsson as well. I guess what I'm asking you is, when you see Tage Thompson transform into what he's become compared to what he was, do you kind of think that we should give Casey Middlestat more time? Like, am I burying him? Not me, but a lot of Sabres fans. Are we burying this guy too quick right now? Or do you feel like at this point of his career, he's played enough games, we've seen enough, he's played enough minutes in top 6, top 9, ice time, that is this what you see is what you're going to get? Get rid of him now if you can.
It's tough because the injury stuff he had to deal with last year really just set him back, because he was ready. Lance and I agree on this. We think he was ready to bust out last year because he had a great camp, looked like fantastic shape, the whole thing. He was ready to go. And then he gets hurt like the first game of the season. And then he's not really a factor in the lineup for another 3 months after that. And you're like, oh, that stinks. I think the organization really likes him. I think they like him a lot. which I think is why they're as patient as they are with him, and they know they got to work stuff out. I also think there's a bit of an unfair expectation for Granato to fix everybody who comes through now, because Tyson Jost was a number 10 pick in the draft, and he got traded from Colorado last season to Minnesota, misses out on a Stanley Cup because of it. Like, that sucks. Like, you got trade deadline swap with Minnesota, and loses out on playing for a cup for the team that drafted him, and played there for like 3-4 years, whatever it was. So they pick him up on waivers, they bring him in here, and then people start thinking like, oh, well, Don fixed Tage, so he's got to be able to fix Joe's too. And it's like, well, sometimes guys' skill sets have to adjust to what they are as NHL pros. Like, what they were in college or juniors or whatever is not what they're always destined to become as pros. Like, sometimes you just got to change your game up to fit in and play more effectively. Like, that's just how it goes. I think in Casey's case, he's such an offensive-minded player that I'm not saying you can't like help him become a better defensive player. And I don't think his defense is that big of a problem right now. He's pretty good on the PK, honestly. Like, he's been pretty good there. But like, to be a better, well-rounded player, like there's some of that aspect, because right now, I mean, he's their face-off guy, kind of, which is a little weird, but that face-offs are just a giant team-wide issue. Just if you need them for the big ones, then okay, win those.
Sure.
But it's they're being patient with him, because who wants to be the team that gives up a guy that just needed an extra year or something like that, or just needed to have the right coach or person or player to bend their ear, or have the right experience where now everything clicks and now I've got it. Like, you just firing. You basically don't want to give away the next Tage Thompson. It's kind of the
right.
scare.
That's what I'm getting. And is it easier to be a little more patient with a guy like Middlestat, because you don't really have? It's not like they have, like last year at the end of the season, especially, you felt like Quinn and Paterka were right there. Like, they were on the verge of being NHL ready to go, and obviously they certainly are now. Which, by the way, man, that line is really, really fun to watch. But with Middlestat, it's not like Quinn is, nipping at his heels right now, waiting to get on the ice. You know what I'm saying? These guys, Hinestro's is hurt, right? He's injured right now.
Banged up. Yep.
Which I kind of wish he wasn't, because I'd like to see if he were healthy, what Granato might do with, all of a sudden Middlestat continuing to struggle, and maybe at least one of these two guys might get a night or two off in the press box. I don't know. But I guess what I'm saying is the fact that they got good prospects right now, but they don't have anybody who's like right there who could come up on this team tomorrow if Middlestat were to twist his ankle and be out for a couple weeks. You know what I'm saying?
Correct. Yeah.
That affords them to be a little bit more patient with him right now.
Yeah. And it's also because he plays center. Like, I mean, he's played some wing now because they wanted to get Krebs between him and Olofsson. Like, I get it, but Middlestat's still taking some face-offs, but just the defensive assignment part of that is the difference there. But there is nobody in Rochester right now that's pushing to be, like that third line attacking, a third attacking line center. Like, there's not somebody there right now. Next year, however,
right,
Yuri Kulik, who's playing at Rochester, is playing very, very well right now in Rochester. But like, they're not gonna bull rush him up. That he could play in the NHL. I think he could play, but let him get some more games in North America. Like, he's not an immediate threat to jump to the NHL right now, but he's playing very good in Rochester now. Matt Savoy didn't get selected as part of the preliminary roster for Team Canada.
Saw that, yeah.
He's had a bit of a tough year there, but his team's weirdly, like, his team is playing very well. They're winning a lot of games, but him, and then like there's another guy that was drafted like within the last year or so that is playing on the second line with him. Their top line is like a bunch of 20-year-old kids, which is like not really kids anymore. They're playing junior hockey. They're overage guys, but like, they're doing well with them. So like, you just keep running them out there. Not very great from the development side of things, but it's not like he's having like an Isak Rosean time out there where he's playing 7 minutes a game and getting benched and stuff like that. It's different with him, but there's been struggles, so it's a little different. But like, those two guys are going to push, You know, Savoy probably not next year. Savoy might go back to junior next year, you know, depending on how the rest of the season plays out. But Kulik is the next guy up next year. Not, you know, again, not this year. Maybe he plays a couple games at the end of the season. We'll see.
Yeah.
But it's kind of on Casey to get it together this year, because helps, you know, not help, but like other guys are on the way and people are going to be coming for jobs. Like, you know, Roseanne's another one. Roseanne's playing very well. From Victor Olofsson, I'm looking over my shoulder going like, well, I only signed a 2-year contract this summer. When am I getting sent out of town? You know, because that's his destiny. Seems like he's going to get traded at some point, whether it's this year or next year. It seems like that's going to happen. But again, it's up to those kids to make it, to force the issue. And that's what we've seen from Cousins and Quinn and Peterka, is that they've forced themselves to be the number 2 line. You know, everybody thought it was going to be Middlestad, Olofsson, and, you know, take your pick of whoever. No, it's those 3, the PDQ line. We're running with it. Somebody said that to me today on Twitter. I'm running.
Saw
with
that. Like
PDQ
it's so much
line.
better than the kids line.
Oh
yes.
my God, yes. Yeah, but they're the number 2 line right now. And against the Sharks, they played like a number 1 line. They were so good.
They were. I watched that game. It was exciting.
Great.
Again, if you're looking from a glass full approach, I think the Sabres have 2 really good lines, and I think they have 3 really good defensemen. There's lots to build on. The checking line is fine.
Right.
If you're looking at the glass half empty approach, so before we get out of here, I mean, some of it goes without saying. Either Middlestad and Olofsson have to become good players, consistent players, 5-on-5 players,
yes,
or that line is there's going to be a new line here in the next 6 to 18 months that, you know, those guys are going to be out, because again, I really like these top 2 lines. Also, I think they're ultimately going to need another really good defenseman. Like I said, there's 3 that you feel really good about right now. Here's the other thing, though, and we don't talk about this enough. I don't think anybody ever talks about this enough, because we spend so much time talking about the young kids and all the goal scorers. It's freaking goaltending. You know, again, glass half empty. The Sabres, I think they've only won like 3 of their last 13 or 14, something like that. They went on that 7-game losing streak. That buried them. That hurt them a lot. Anyway, I know stats can be really misdeceiving when it comes to goaltending. I understand that. I look at UPL right now, and coming into last night's game, I think he had like a 4.22 goals against. Again, if you want to say, well, he's played better than the stats indicate, I suppose that would be fair. I don't like what I saw last night. Again, I'm no analytics dude. I'm no fancy hockey stat guy, but this dude am I wrong when I say I am growing confident? And I know I'm not the only Sabres fan who thinks this. He ain't it. I don't see it with UPL. Am I entirely premature at this point still? Which maybe I am. I don't know. I see his ceiling as a viable number 2. That is like literally what I see is not his floor. That's what I see his ceiling at this point. I'm not impressed with this stint at all. Am I reading into this wrong though?
Not completely. There are some meritable complaints to be had. I think that's only fair. You know, there are some occasions where it's like, oh man, how does he miss that one? Or he's out high glove if he gets beat again. Like, you know, correct it. Like, why does he get so small? He's 6'5". Why does he become so small when he's in position? Like, things like that, where you're just kind of like, all right, man, like, what's going on here? The flip side of it, though, I mean, like, and his numbers are not good. Like, you know, 856 save percentage is brutal.
That's terrible.
418 goals against average, which is that's a team stat.
That's a team stat.
But that's still not good. You know, 2-2-1. Well, he's batting 500 for records, so I get, you know, kind of 500 points percentage.
He played tough teams early on too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I said goals against average. I might not want to put too much into that, but that save percentage you just told me, that's really shitty.
Yeah, but also, like, okay, so he's allowed 21 goals. It's tough. 10 of them are power play goals, though. Like, how is your team giving up 10 power play goals? And it's not always the goalie's fault. The PK has to do their job, and the PK has not done their job. Now, granted, it's Colorado scoring 3 power play goals against them. It's Tampa Bay scoring 3. Elite teams taking advantage of a young team making dumb mistakes. Like, that's what that is. But also, You're professional hockey players. You should, the PK you just naturally have to be better than that. Like, you just cannot be like that, like for any amount of time. Like, they've got the 6th worst PK in the league right now. Like, they're, Anaheim and St. Louis have been god awful on the PK, and they're 1-2, and they're 4 to 5 percentage points ahead of them. Like, that's not good. Like, it's, you're barely over 70%. That's bad. That's very, very bad. But help your goalies out, man. Like, it's, his save percentage on power plays is like 656 or something. It's horrible. And like, every other shot is going in almost. And you're like, well, he's got to stop one. It's like, well, yeah, but like, I don't know. Cover the guy taking a slap shot from the circle. Cover the guy in front of the net that, just seems to have all day to shoot. Do something. Do literally anything. Get in front of a shot. Block a shot. Lyubushkin tried to block some shots, and he did. Probably saved them a point against Tampa, but he, messed up his foot doing it. So you want to appropriately like judge him for some of this stuff, like, because again, you can't argue those numbers. The numbers are bad. But then you look at, like, how he does in the different strengths. Again, power play, 688 save percent, terrible. 10 of 32 shots against him have gone in. Bad, but that's the PK. Like, fix your PK. Do better on the PK. But even strength, 910. Craig Anderson's is only slightly better at 915. Like, okay. Like, if you don't take penalties, he's going to have a much better chance to win games. And they didn't take very many penalties last night against the Sharks, did they? Yeah. Like, Sabres power play lit it up instead. Like, that was the difference in that one. So, stay out of the box, help your goalie. Like, until you fix your PK, stay out of the goddamn box.
Well, I tell you what, man, if nothing else, good and bad, the Buffalo Sabres are keeping things interesting this year. And like I said, they're a fun watch right now. And we said this before this season. I think realistically, that was probably the best that you could hope for, is that they would be a fun watch, but they're keeping things interesting. Big couple weeks coming up here for the Buffalo Bills. Guys, make sure you follow Joe on Twitter at Joe Yerdon. Check out Maidens Day Podcast every Monday. Joe Yerdon, Lance Lazowski from the Buffalo News, the best hockey podcast when it comes to Buffalo hockey anyway, out there, bar none. And again, make sure, if you haven't done this already, go to notedhockey.substack.com. Check out Joe's Noted Hockey Substack. Subscribe. $5 per month. That's peanuts. Or $50 per year, or $50 plus per year. You can be a noted founder. Put Joe to work. Thanks, buddy, man. Like I said, it's been a couple weeks. I had to knock a little bit of rust off here on my end, but it's always good to have you on the podcast, man.
It's good to be back. It's good to be talking some football and getting into the spirit of things. It's always a good time.